Today's podcast touches on a few sensitive issues, some issues of violence and also some adult themes. So just a warning to our viewers before you proceed to watch this podcast. Today's podcast features an incredible man, Brad Mackney. Brad is of Indigenous descent. He has been through an incredible amount of trauma and resilience and has risen above and shares such an inspirational stories to the LGBTQI community and also to all Australians alike. And we are so fortunate to be speaking with him today. Brad, thank you so much for your time. Being Indigenous, can you please do a quick welcome to country for us?
Of course I can. I'd like to say thank you for having me today on today's show. I'd just like to do a welcome to country. For the Gadigal lands, I'd like to pay my past respects of traditional custodians of the lands of emerging and our elders.
Now, I do want to start with your childhood, and I know there's some trauma there for you.
My life was really good until up to year 3. I ended up having my mother and father ended up splitting up at a very young age. And myself and my brother were one of those two childs that were locked up in the room, hearing everything in what was happening out in the kitchen, what was happening in the laundry and stuff like that. And we wanted to go out there to see if our parents were okay and, see what they were fighting about, because that's what we wanted to know as younger childs. Like, why is our mum and dad fighting? Like, what's happening? So we ended up opening up the door at a very young age, and I ended up seeing my mother and father just full on just getting into one another, yelling, scratching. And I just really thought, this is our life. Like, our parents are gone out of our life, and it's like, who's going to really look after us? My mother yelled at me and turned around and said, call Nan, which is my dad's mum, call Nan, tell her to come around and get you guys. So that's when my Nan ended up taking us all aboard and just, making sure that we were safe. And we had that safe house again, we call it a safe house. So then that's when I ended up staying with Nan as long as I want. We ended up moving to Nambucca Heads. We really made up a new life in that area.
There was a bit of domestic violence in the home with mum and dad.
Yep.
Moved in with Nan. And then moved to Nambucca Heads.
And then we went to Nambucca Heads, my mother and my brother. Yes. And then because we just wanted a new life and, towards each other.
So trying to create a new life to create security.
Correct. Security,
safety.
safe. Yeah. Feel security, feel safe and have more friends, a bit more love again in our life, Yep.
And did you find that at Nambucca Heads?
Well, I found that with Nambucca Heads, with my friends and everything like that. I did for a quite long time. But then I ended up, when I was growing up and whatnot, I ended up having all different types of friends, as the world got on and stuff like that. When I became a bit more aware of myself and who I was as a person, and also as a young kid, I wanted to have that more, exploring and stuff like that, and really found out who my true friends were, and who I was as a person.
And did you tell your mum or your brother about this?
I knocked on my mum's door while she was in bed, and I said, "Mum, do you mind if I talk to you for a minute?" And she's like, "Yeah, what's up?" I said, "It's going to be private. Like, it's a very confidential. I really want to talk to you." She's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And I turned and said, "So, how you said to me that you, for years, you said if you didn't, if I came out gay and anything like that, and I was really scared, like I was shaking my bricks, and she's like, "Yeah, what's up? Get to the story. What?" I said, "Oh, don't worry, because I was very scared, of the behaviour she was showing me and the signs that she was showing me." And she's like, she really wanted me to say it, but then the anger behind her, like when I was going to tell her, it was just like, it was become more forceful towards me. And I said, "You know what? I'm gay."
So you were describing that scene vividly. So you obviously remember exactly at that moment when you spoke to your mum about that.
I do. And I do remember that moment. Obviously it's a bit more other words what she said. And I just turned around and said to her, "I'm actually scared telling you, and this is how you're treating me right now." I'm like, this is a big thing at 16 years old, actually telling you that this is who I am. I felt very unsafe, and I just went from the front door to put my bag in my room and lay in my bed, because I'm like, have I done the wrong thing? Thoughts were going through my head. Well, I always ended up getting beaten up by a couple of years, by my mother and by my brother, and because of who I was as identity-wise, as a young LGBTQIA kid. They ended up brutally bashing me as well over the time. When I keep coming home from school, when I was going through my HSC as well, in year 11 that was. And I ended up having them, bashing me every time when I came home from school, because of I was protecting my aura and I was protecting myself. Because of that, my mum ended up, taking me to court because I was protecting myself. So then I ended up doing all my HSC. They bashed me every time when I came in. I don't know why they were bashing me. They just felt like they needed to do that, and I'm like, well, if they're doing this, how's my dad going to feel? Or how's my grandparents are going to, perceive this? That if my mother didn't like me, how would everyone else perceive me, if I tell them?
And did you tell your dad?
I told my dad by text message. My dad messaged me. He's like, why are you and your mother fighting? I need to know why you're fighting before you come back to live with me. When I told my dad who I actually was as a child, as a young child and as a young gay kid, my dad sent me a message back after a huge message and turned around and said, that's okay, son. I love you no matter what. And I'm here to protect you and I'm here to support you. I'm like, that is everything to even have at least one person in my family to even, to acknowledge to who I was, acknowledge to what I was going through and respecting that. So then my dad came to my court case that day. It was in Maxville that day and it was 2 days before my HSC. And I was like, oh my God, like this is such a scary moment. I'm like, am I going to go to jail? Like when you've been putting yourself in that position, what was one escape to do is by doing that, especially when you feel so belittled and felt nothing. Do you know what I mean? So you need to protect yourself.
What was the outcome of the court case?
So the outcome of the court case is that she got an AVO out of me and it was a 2-year AVO. I wasn't allowed to go near her for 2 years. So then I ended up moving in with my dad. I ended up moving back to Casino to where I originally was from as a younger child. And I ended up living with my nan and my pop and my dad. I was obviously a young kid going through that stages as a young Indigenous kid, do you know what I mean? And my mother didn't want nothing to do with me at that age. That's how I felt. To my dad saying, that's okay, I love you. Yeah.
What a lot to deal with from such a young age, from when you were in year 3, about 8 or 9 years old.
Exactly. It's a big thing in my life.
How did you overcome a lot of these challenges and a lot of the obstacles that were thrown your way in these pivotal years of your life?
So then I basically ended up just taking that bit of a moment for myself and just like figure out who I was, start trying to be myself around the people that loved me. And I ended up just going out here and there to a bit of clubs out on the Gold Coast, in Coffs Coast, and I ended up doing a few gigs here and there. I might go to a few gigs. What I mean by gigs, it's just like, arts and entertainment, find myself again. And I'm like, this is very refreshing. This is so refreshing because it's like, this is my life. And I really liked to look at the powerful of people up there in the arts, entertainment and, performance entertainment world. I ended up becoming a drag queen and here I am, 13 years later. Yeah.
So I guess that your experience in life, what you've been through, you've overcome a lot of things through some inner strength and resilience. And you finally found what you call home.
Well, yeah, I really found my home and I found my inner self as well, by putting all of my anger into what I love to do, and in an inspiring way. I just don't want any other child to go through what I went through, at all, because I want everyone to feel loved and accepted and appreciated in life, So I don't want no kid to go through what I went through, with their parents and the way, their mother or father may come perceiving them.
You were treated really inhumanely and you've risen above that. You're such an inspiration to not just the LGBTQI community, but also your Indigenous nations and your Indigenous people. Brad, what would you like to say to people watching this podcast?
I don't want no other Indigenous people or anyone out there to go through what I went through. And there are, people out there like myself and other groups that is willing to listen and support you in each way out there, because I just don't want no Indigenous kid to go through what I went through at all with my parents.
Brad, thank you very much. You're an absolute inspiration. Thank you for coming on today's show.